Hey everyone, and welcome to the MSP Tea Room. This is a special pre-recorded edition, and right now Tara is either on a plane or has just landed in the UK and is unavailable, so you're stuck with me, Dean, Spicy Tea. Sorry, the good tea isn't here. And we will be talking about something that I know that all of you have an opinion on: post-event marketing and cold lists. So stay tuned and deal with my terrible microphone setup while we were on the road. It's 100% my fault. Sorry, everybody. Thanks for coming to the tea room. Welcome, everyone, to the MSP Tea Room, live from MSP. Well, not live, recorded.
Recorded.
Yeah.
What did you just call it?
Welcome, everybody, to the MSP Tea Room, recorded at MSPGeekCon25.
2025.
Me and Tara. Sorry it's been so long since the last one. We've been busy.
We've been traveling.
We don't have our teacups.
No teacups. I have a water, but yeah, our calendars need to we need to work together on those things.
Yes.
Maybe.
So we wanted today to talk about something that comes up all the time, all year around all the conferences. Everyone has an opinion on, and it's basically the lists that are generated from conferences or are scraped or sold or whatever, just lists in general. And everyone has an opinion. Everyone has been affected by them, or at least been on one at some point. And just kind of talk a little bit more about that while we're here. We have some really cool guests that we're going to interview about that have both MSP and vendor perspectives.
Yep.
Of course, Tara and I have both been well, she's still an MSP, have both been MSPs and our vendors. So we have that perspective as well.
Yeah. So I think for us, though, it's been hard, right? Because with 𝗵𝗵, we took our thoughts from our MSP and maybe we took it to the extreme with 𝗵𝗵, because we don't do any cold outbound. We don't use the lists. And we never pay. I don't know how many people know, you can usually pay for a tier of an event and get the event list. This is very common. And it's not like people are being sketchy about getting the list. It's written into contracts and stuff. You can do some sketchy things to get lists too, I suppose.
There are a lot of sketchy third-party services that will scrape you on LinkedIn and then contact us and say, do you want to buy a list of decision makers that were at conference, whatever.
But we've always had a hard stance of we're not going to use them, because our thought process is we want to work with people that want to work with us at the end of the day, right? And I will never forget a vendor after an event, may have even started before the event, sent me 36 emails or something in a 2-week period. And I was like, there's one person I'm probably never going to work with moving forward. It's you guys. So maybe we came in a little heavy-handed with our tactic, but we're trying some different things and doing community-led and not really having a full-blown sales team. But I understand the point behind them. But I just personally think booth scans and legitimate conversations will get you further than just having this general list, right? I don't know about you.
Well, it's funny you say that. I actually think you have some privilege in being able to say that statement. I think, as many of our viewers will know, 𝗵𝗵 is beloved and has an incredibly active community base that advocates, interacts with, engages, and really are raving fans of the product. And not that it's a privilege that was strategy, skill, effort, and a lot of work, and maybe some luck on the part of your team to get there. I mean, that didn't just happen.
I think it's a lot of luck, but I think it's a lot of relatability though, too, right? Because we're coming at it from an aspect of we don't know what we don't know. So we're going in as an MSP and going, all right, we're going to run a SaaS company.
Right.
And we're going to do what we liked seeing other vendors do, and we're going to avoid the things we didn't like. So I think that actually helps, and maybe it is privilege, but some of it is we're trying to change the way things are done, right?
The privilege, one of our guests, I actually feel sure has the same privilege because they've done the same thing.
Yeah.
The privilege is by having such an engaged partner base that is so openly vocal and loud about basically marketing for you, your stakeholders, your leadership team understand that your conference strategy of engagement, speaking over scans, has value because it's been proven. A lot of vendors want what you have done and what one of our guests have done, and they would love to be in that same position, but they're not there. They don't have that. And so to them, us saying, well, just have a community, have partner advocates, do as 𝗵𝗍 has done, do as Ninja has done. You know, like, sure, they should. We all agree, but it's not that easy. So they have lists.
It's great in theory, right? And lists work too.
They do,
I mean,
unfortunately.
If you do drip campaigns and things, there are, studies that will say these have worked. Like, I don't know about you guys, but even if I'm just passing a billboard, like every so often I'll be like, oh, that's kind of cool. Like, I could maybe use that. And then you Google it. That's the same concept, I guess. But I think it's the deception of some of the vendors in the space that get the list. And then they're like, oh, we met at this event. And it's like, no, I never spoke to you. Like, I have no idea who you are. I think when you lead with deception, I mean, you're starting a relationship with deception. Someone's not going to want to work with you at the end of the day, right? If you at least lead with, hey, this event had a shit ton of vendors, but hey, it's us. It's us. It's fine. There were 300 vendors there. Maybe you didn't see us, because I've had people say that. We were at PAX 8 Beyond last year and somebody was like, wait, you guys were there? And I'm like, yeah, like we were over on the side. And it's in that instance, as long as you're going in with honesty, I think it's fine.
Well, let's assume for a minute. And I know sometimes we're aware that like that is going to either be an intentional instigation tactic, frame an email a certain way to get a reaction, or it is some employee that doesn't know what they're doing. But let's pretend for a minute, no malice, no ignorance. How could that legitimately happen? And a great example, a lot of these shows have either special sessions or after parties where you're being scanned and you don't know who's sponsoring, and it all just goes into one big list.
Yeah.
And that gets handed off to marketing. Let's say 𝗵𝗍 was working a list.
Yeah.
You sponsored a party. You were scanning people at the party.
Yep.
And everybody who was being scanned at the party was fine with that. And then that all went to one list. And you gave it to your marketing, and your marketing just didn't know who came from who. Yeah. I could totally get an email with no misintent that said, hey, we love seeing you at our booth, when in fact I only saw you at the party and didn't know you were getting the list. And I say this not to excuse the behavior. I just want more MSPs to understand why, so you know how to talk to and advocate for what you want.
But I'm also going to push back on that though, right? Because we all use like a CRM or something like that. We internally use HubSpot. And there are ways to put your lists in there that the vendor who's getting it can say, this list came from a party. And you can say, hey, thanks for coming to our after hours event. Like, there are ways, and I'm going to push back on vendors. And we are one now in the space, but there are ways that you make sure those things don't happen, right? And you do lead with the honesty, because there are mistakes. There are, but sometimes you see the same people making the same mistakes over and over, right? And then they're not really mistakes.
So how do you, let's say that situation you just described, let's say, keep 𝗵𝗍 as the example here. You know that. And you're very organized. That would never happen under your watch. Things would go to the right areas.
I'm never going to say never. It definitely could happen, guys.
Let's say you had a relatively new hire. Yeah. And sent them to an event, thought they had what they need, and they made a mistake and sent that. Do you think an apology or sending a follow-up is worthwhile?
100%.
Okay.
100%. I'm big on taking ownership though when you make a mistake, right? It's the same as anything else. And that's that accountability and that transparency. And, hey, we messed up. And we've done that before. Even when there's something like that's a hiccup in our app or there's a bug, it's like, hey guys, we made a mistake. I think people appreciate that more than just continuing and acting like
always we made a mistake.
Well, and then acting like it didn't happen, right? Like that just looks worse, sweeping it under the rug instead of just addressing it and being like, you know what, we messed up. That's on us. And that's for those new hires, that is a time to educate them on, hey, this is actually how we do things. Sure. We have separate lists. These are booth scans. These are, and people are going to be pretty forgiving as long as you own up to things.
So I'm sitting here in the temporary MSP tea room at MSPGeekCon25 with the amazing Jonathan Crowe.
Hey, everybody.
And we were tasked by my other tea room co-host, Tara, who is just slightly off camera making faces at us right now, to talk a little bit about lists. So before I ask you any provocative questions, just from the heart, what's your opinion on lists at MSP events?
I mean, I feel like these are, it's the norm, right? So as a vendor, I've never been a fan of gating anything or having things that we basically, the result is we are doing outreach that people are not always going to be welcoming. I think it's a negative thing to do. All this said, when you're doing a conference, you're getting vendors to help sponsor and make the conference possible, right? The vendors need to then produce ROI, and lists, I think, are just the most commonly accepted form of this. You know, with Ninja, like, we're actually having this discussion internally. There's shows where that is certainly our primary focus. We've targeted them as a good show. There's going to be people who maybe are not in our system.
Sure.
It's a net new thing. It's a good priority for that show. There's other types of shows, like honestly this one too, where that's not necessarily the big priority. But even internally, we're having to discuss and think a little bit differently, because the standard is, yes, you go to a show because you get the list. It's all about the list. It's all about the scans. And then, of course, the follow-up afterwards. Yeah.
So I got 2 questions.
Yeah, totally.
One of them you might not like.
Sure.
But the first one, just, we've said it, I've said it, you just said it, Tara said it before on other stuff. Like, we talk about lists as being an ROI, return on investment. If I'm an MSP, like, that maybe doesn't make any sense to me. Like, so why would a list potentially be valuable to you or any other vendor? What is the return on investment of even having a list of attendees?
Well, I mean, then you're able to do your email outreach. You know, you're able. Having a list, even with at your MSP. I mean, any type of marketing. There's the marketing that that you own, right? And then there's all the additional things you can do on social, where you're building your presence and everything, but it's really, at the end of the day, it's not yours, right? Like,
Okay.
Having a list is going to enable you to have direct outreach to prospects, and you can do that in various ways that may or may not be effective.
But I mean, especially, like, did you happen to be a larger vendor? Couldn't I assume as an MSP that surely you must know who's in the industry? Don't you already have a list? Like, why do you need this list?
Yeah. So, I mean, it goes back to, man, marketing attribution is, no one has this down to an absolute science. If they say they are, they're lying. There's always like they are lying to you. But having touch points is really what it comes down to. And there's all sorts of, well-recognized stats about how many touches it takes to get in front of someone until they actually have a conversation with you and all that. So even if, yes, like, everyone knows, let's just say everyone at the show knows Ninja, everyone's even in our system.
Okay.
There's still value in knowing that, hey, they were at, this person specifically was at the show. Maybe that we can reach out to them in a different way that, some of the conversations we're having, some of the things we're focusing on right now, we're able to do that a little bit more effectively.
All right. Now, I know from a previous conversation we had at the show, that you had some debate with your own team at this show about list capture.
Yes.
Is that something we could talk about for a minute?
Yeah, sure. Totally.
So, Jonathan asked me the other night my opinion, and I assume he asked a few others, about Ninja directly deciding if a particular thing they were sponsoring, if it was appropriate to capture a list. And if sort of put on my vendor hat and have some sympathy for a vendor, this was an after party event that Ninja paid a significant amount of money to make happen. It was not a requirement for the conference to occur. So this was after, and you put a lot of money and time into it. And the debate is, does that entitle us to scan the badges at the door to generate a list? And you had mixed feelings about it. It wasn't, corporate Jonathan, you'd think would be like, yeah, but you had mixed feelings. Your team had mixed feelings. Can you talk about that?
Oh man, corporate Jonathan.
Yeah.
Wait until you see me in my corporate Jonathan outfit.
Corporate Jonathan.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think it comes down to the set priorities even within Ninja. And I'm sure this is true. This is absolutely true for other vendors, even probably at some MSPs, right? There's different departments. They have different goals, different things they're being measured on, right? So our events, most of the time when we're at trade shows, it's put on by our demand gen team. Their priority is always around how many net new leads can we get, right? And so, of course, when you think of things through that lens, all of your activities are going to be kind of lean built
Sure.
towards doing that, right? But I think with our conversation, when I was asking your opinion about and what I felt my opinion about this was, that is not always that can be short-sighted. There can be other impacts of doing that where you can achieve that immediate goal, I suppose, but you're also going to generate like some negative reaction to that. And so thinking about stepping back, looking at the bigger picture, what is this actually like? What's the goal of this event or the specific activity that we're sponsoring? Not everything has to be lead gen.
And so in this case, at least from what I could see at this party, we had these really cool glowing cups that were all branded Ninja.
Yeah.
That cost money. There were drinks that were provided. That cost money. There was a karaoke service provided. That cost money. The bar staff. That cost money. I mean, I don't know what all that costs. I'm going to guess probably somewhere like at least 10 grand. And you ultimately made the last minute decision not to scan badges. So when you go back to your corporate overlords and they basically say, hey, you spent whatever that, large sum of money was on a party, what did I get for it? How do you answer that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that we're internally figuring this out a bit. I mean, the long story is like, when we do things like this in the future, I think we're going to get to a place where that money is not coming from demand gen budget. It's just about like what bucket it's coming from, right? And so, I am director of community at Ninja. I have different goals and different things that I'm being measured on, and I'm super fortunate that our leadership sees the value in what I'm doing and never has thought of community being strictly.
Please keep seeing that value. Don't fire Jonathan because he spent all that money on a party and didn't get a list.
But I mean, honestly, like I step back, I look at the bigger picture. We certainly have brand awareness and brand affinity as very real goals. Are they harder to track than a tangible list? We have this X number of leads. Yes, it can be a little squishier that way, but we see the value in it. And I mean, it's the same thing with, I don't know, having billboards and stuff like that, right? Like there are some things that are harder to measure. Doesn't mean they're not valuable.
So last question. An MSP who is at this show or any other show that Ninja was at, if they get an email later that, the classic, like, thank you for stopping by the booth, and that MSP goes, what the hell? I didn't talk to them. I don't want this.
Yeah.
What do you say to that MSP?
Oh, dude. So, I mean, we've gone through this, right? Like the reality is we have a ton of salespeople. They're often fresh out of school, we train them. We have an obligation to set them up for success. And they are facing real pressures with quotas and things, right? And sometimes people make mistakes and do things ways that aren't going to be effective. Like I know, like I've seen other examples of other vendors getting called out for this type of thing too, like saying like, oh, hey, like the outreach being, what I've seen people being the most upset about is what you're talking about, where it's not necessarily even just the outreach. I think a lot of people kind of expect that.
Sure.
You delete it, you unsubscribe, whatever. But it's when there's misleading elements to it, saying like, Dean, I loved our conversation. It's like, no, you didn't talk to me. You weren't even at that show. Like, is that you? Like, anytime where there's something that's misleading like that, I feel like that's what really triggers people to get pissed off. Rightfully so. And so what I would do then is I would reach out, or another member of the team, we'd apologize, and then we'd actually talk to that rep about it.
Why is 2 minutes on Google not actually as reasonable as it sounds? Why can't the people who are emailing or dialing or running these sequences actually go research every lead in front of them? Because there is a reason.
I have the same thought, right? Like, why don't just do it right? Why when you take that time? It really is though. Man, I have a lot of empathy for people who are BDRs doing cold calling. I mean, because so much of it is such a grind. And so much of it does come down to just time. It's about how many dials you make, how many emails you're sending out. And different organizations are different about it. But I mean, they can get measured very strictly on how much time they're spending on every little thing.
It's a volume-based job. They have to get, So a lot of times, I just think that's important to say that a lot of times this is not malice and it's not even ignorance. It's somebody whose livelihood depends on them getting through the greatest quantity possible, and they don't have time to look up every little person.
And I think it's our responsibility at Ninja or at any org, right, to set those people, give them the right expectations. It's not their fault for like having their goals that they're trying to hit, right? We need to be deciding we need to be providing the right training, setting the right contacts, right expectations, all those things.
Thank you, Jonathan.
Yeah, man.
I appreciate you saying all this, and when I post this and tag Ninja and they instantly fire you.
Anyone hiring?
Yeah.
Oh, great. Ah. Hi guys, it's Tara with Brandon here from ZenTop and 𝗃𝗏. We are at MSP Geek this week, and we are talking about lists. So I have very distinct thoughts about lists, but I'm curious as an MSP, how you feel about the lists that vendors get from conferences. Some of them can buy a list of all attendees, not at every conference, but sometimes, or the scans from your booth. I think those are a little different than lists, but we can talk about that too. So what do you think about it?
I understand why they exist. I'll have my MSP hat on for this one. When you email me as a vendor and it's we talked at our booth and we actually talked to the booth, then cool, doing your job. Awesome, no worries. When it's a all attendee list and it's hey, we may have run across each other, and it's kind of obvious it's not like we trying to say we talked to each other when we didn't. It's just like, this is an email because we got your name out of a list in less direct terms.
Wait, you don't love getting the emails that are like, oh, hey, we saw you at our booth and you didn't actually see them at the booth?
That's the point when I immediately just black hole your domain.
Oh.
And you can't email us anymore. That, or if you get a cold calendar invite.
Oh.
That is another thing that people are doing now. And it
have not seen that yet.
Incredibly infuriating. Yes. People will just like send you a calendar invite.
And just like drop it in and like, hey, this meeting's now on your calendar. Like,
would you like to accept or decline it?
Really? Okay. I didn't know that was a tactic. So with your vendor hat, let's pop that way. Do you have a different feeling on lists, or do we still feel the same?
Roughly the same.
Okay.
I mean, I see more of the value of it because it is expensive to go to these events and you want to get ROI on it, right? I don't mind. I preferably want to have conversations with people who stop by the booth because they showed interest. Those are going to be the most valuable leads. That being said, there may also be some value if we do get a list for the whole event to send out one of those, hey, you may have seen us here. Just in case you missed us, here's this information. Where it's very obvious that, like, this is not a targeted reach out. This is just a marketing email. That's about where I draw the line. I think anything else would be probably damaging to the brand in a way, because people talk, and one of the most annoying things that people talk about and get flustered about is when you have those cold reach outs.
Well, the reality is, right, when you're running an MSP, you get so many emails a day. I mean, even as a vendor, I'm still getting those cold emails, and it's like, oh, I saw you at the event. I'm like, I was in my booth the whole time, so I'm not quite sure how you saw me in your booth at the event. But I guess my thing with it, and why we've been so protective in 𝗵𝗵 with it, is I was so tired of those as an MSP. So maybe we went a little too far one way, but we do the booth scans. But all of this is like a game that can be played almost. Like, people come to the booth and be like, oh, I already use you, but you can scan me so I can have a shirt. And I'm like, no, I don't think that works, right?
Yeah.
So do you think you should be scanning for swag or anything like that? Or is this, I want conversations with people. It's like, do you actually want me to talk to you after this? Those are the scans that are really valuable to me, honestly.
Yeah, we bring swag as a free item, and the more people use it, the more exposure we get. Like, we have t-shirts, and if someone wears a t-shirt the next day, then our logo is walking around on one other person. I don't want to make that conditional on a scan. And if someone already uses us, I don't want to scan them, probably for the same reason, because I don't want to pollute our lead list from the event with information we already have.
Yeah, those aren't good leads. And I mean, they're not leads at all, right? We'll scan them if they want to be on like community calls, or they want more info or training. Like, that is valuable to us, right? Because we would love for them to be more involved in our community.
Well,
so I guess how can we educate people on why this is happening then, right? Because events are expensive. I mean, even community run events are still expensive. So for us, we don't actually have a sales team, right? So we don't have those metrics that a lot of companies have. We're trying to do things a little different. And I'm not saying it's right or wrong. It's we're testing out the waters, right?
Yeah.
So how do you think, because as a vendor and as an MSP now, same as us, hi, welcome to the club, the craziness, do you think we should be educating people on why this stuff's important, or trying to change the game, maybe? I don't know.
I mean, it comes down to intent for me, really. Like, are you being honest in your communication? Because if you're cold reaching out or cold calling, I mean, MSP's cold call too. Or cold email. If you try to pretend like we had more of an interaction than we actually did, my first interaction with you is going to be from a place where you're disingenuous. And that's going to leave a bad taste in my mouth. If you are sending an email out like, hey, you may have seen us at this event. Here's more information on us. Let us know if you want more. That's...
Or maybe you missed us because there were 140 vendors here, right? Yeah, that makes sense.
It's very similar to like someone passing out flyers, sticking in the mail slot of the company.
Yeah.
Like there's no obligation to do anything besides like look at it, and you don't have to open it. You can just delete it.
Yeah. Or make rules like, was it Tom Lawrence? He has like the unsubscribe rule.
Yeah.
You know about that? Yeah. It's one of the smartest things I've ever put into action. But no, I think that's really good. And I think that's it right now, right? Okay. Because we have a thing in 10 minutes.
Back in the studio after having interviewed. One of the things that I kind of want to ask you again and hammer home, because I think there's going to be folks who are going to watch this. They're going to hear what we've said. They're going to hear what Jonathan and Brandon have said. And that's all well and good. And all of you are wonderful. But I'm still, I don't understand. Lists are garbage. They need to go away. And given that you're likely an MSP, you're an MSP, or at least Immense is an MSP. Where are you located?
Baton Rouge, Louisiana.
Do you know within 30 minutes of your office every single MSP?
Do I know them all now?
Declaratively, no, you don't. I don't know, and I'm still discovering MSPs that were within 30 minutes of the original Think Tech office. Yeah. So if I was a vendor who was in Baton Rouge and I had a radius, of 30 minutes from your office that I wanted to find MSPs, even though you've been in business there as an MSP for how long? Is what, 15, 20 years? Yeah. You don't necessarily know everybody. And sometimes when we're looking to do marketing, especially at scale, and MSPs, you know what I'm talking about because you go to events, Chamber of Commerce, things like that. An easy way to be able to just have somewhere to send that marketing is a list. And so even MSPs have lists. So it's not one of those things where I think anybody is innocent of using a list. No. It seems to be, it's more how we use the list.
Yeah, it's using it to the best intent, I would say, and making sure that intent is known and have a goal behind the list, because you can gather, like we have tons of lists we've literally never used because we get sent them after events sometimes. And then it's just like, we dump them into HubSpot, we put them as a non-marketing contact. But some of that is just internal processes for us, but they're there, I guess, if things ever change, and we're still small. So maybe they will as we grow. I mean, you see this from a lot of large companies because there's a lot of moving parts, and the drip campaigns do work and things like that. And it's a quick, easy, I don't want to say dirty, but quick and easy and dirty way to find out a whole bunch of people in an area. Yep. Yeah, it's true.
So what do you feel both as a MSP and as one of, the best vendors?
You're one of us.
How do you feel? Should there be an option that is obvious on marketing for opting out of the marketing? And I don't mean from a compliance or regulatory standpoint.
Oh, I was like, well,
from like a morality standpoint.
I think so. Because even just myself, I get frustrated because I'll come back from events and I'll suddenly get on a list and it's like, oh, I'm a sponsor. Like I had a cold reach out recently on LinkedIn, a private message from a vendor we know very well in the space. And we actually have talked about sponsoring their events. And I went to one of the people over there after, and I was like, hey, just so you know. And she, the gal said, oh, this is a new hire. She didn't know any better. And that's kind of an automated thing. I was like, totally fine. I just want to let you know, like, this is, so she was going to go check their processes because she's like, it was an honest mistake.
Yeah.
Right. So I understand the value from an ROI, right? Return on investment, which I'm sure we've already talked about. But I don't know. Some of it just feels icky to me still. And maybe I'll get past that. I'm not really sure.
So then what do you say to the argument that, so like if our friend Jason were there, Jason will basically say it is on the vendors to police their lists, make sure if people have said they're opting out to not bother them,
100%.
Have clean, accurate data, not waste people's time. Yes. And I think a lot of us would agree. But flip it the other way. Well, as a recipient, I don't have to read anything. Like, what do you say to people who are like, this is stupid, just don't read it?
So my issue with that though is you're putting the manual interaction and the moving of the things or the deleting of the things back on the MSP, which is not what I want to do, right? If we're bringing back a list, and I will tell Anna, because she gets, when we do booth scans, I send them to her and I say whether it's been cleaned or not, because sometimes it hasn't been, and I'll test on somebody and I'll be like, hey, can I just scan like another vendor and just ask them if it's working? Or I'll go in and I'll clean it up ahead of time and I'll remove people who maybe shouldn't have gotten in it, or, you know, maybe it's a vendor who wants to do like an integration with us. I'll scan them and write that in there. So I do think that should be on the vendor through and through, because at the end of the day, a lot of our role, and maybe it's just the automation thing for us, it's to make their lives easier at an MSP, and they already have enough shit to go through. Like they're dealing with fires. Like this is something that is so, I don't want to say unimportant, but it should be so low on their priority list.
It's a small thing, but it's one more thing.
But it's a small thing until you have 30 vendors from one event doing the same thing over and over. And it's like,
and then they start calling you.
No longer is it a small thing, right? It takes up time. Even 2 minutes a day, if you're doing that consistently, it adds up to hours.
So I got one more vendory CRM related question.
Okay.
So as already been stated, most vendors do manage that out of CRM. Most CRMs have all sorts of tools, if you haven't used it as an MSP, to automate email chains and sequences, very similar to what you would do with ticket automation. And so there's a lot of stuff available. If somebody is flagged in your CRM as do not contact, which is a thing sometimes required to be available, but they're a partner. And you need to send them something important as a partner, and your CRM says do not contact, what would you do?
I mean, I personally, we would call them personally or email them outside of the CRM and be like, it has to be a warm touch, right? Because we're about to start newsletters. There are some people who may be in there as a do not contact.
That's exactly.
But then you see them in the booth and they're like, wait, I want to be on your newsletter. And so it's having that one-on-one conversation. And I mean, we're a small team, but we still manage to do that. After every event, if there's notes in those in those scans, like we're sending you a warm email of this is the stuff we talked about. Let's keep the conversation going. I think once again, that's back on the vendor to make sure the expectation is set correctly with the MSP.
But MSPs, you do have to communicate that. Vendors aren't mind readers. You need to let us know if you don't want to be on a list, especially if you're buying. You have to let us know clearly what that means, because otherwise you may get flagged as just do not contact entirely. So
well,
give the information.
And usually once they are a client, like somebody sent me one recently, you can opt out of marketing, but they're like, we're still going to email you about specific things, right? And that's the right way to go about it, in my opinion. I could opt out of the marketing, but I'm like, no, I still want to talk to you guys about product specific stuff for me.
We have some people in HubSpot at Empath that are marked like do not contact about anything. And like every now and then, if I know one of our founders has a good relationship with that MSP, I'd be like, this is important. It's not marketing. What do you want me to do? And some of the times they'll be like, go ahead and send them, like you said, that email outside of HubSpot, or I'll message them on LinkedIn. Other times they're like, no, like this person really doesn't want to be contacted. And we try to do the best we can. You occasionally make the mistakes, but.
Well, and I think it's about sometimes meeting people where they are, because even running the MSP, we had clients who were like, do not email me. You shoot me a text if you need me to get into my computer.
Oh, hell no.
Like things like that. I mean, I know. And
that's a service manager.
But I know. And I would push back as well. But at the same time, in our process, it said you call the person when you're going to work the ticket. If they don't want called, you're going to shoot them a text. We're going to meet them where they want to be.
Final thought from me, MSPs, if you're going to a show, your email systems have supported aliases since the dawn of time. Make a show-specific alias. If you're at MSPGeekCon, maybe a, Dean MSPGeekCon25 at empathmsp.com as an alias. And then at least if I do get on lists, I will remember from where I have a moment to maybe recollect that, hey, I actually did opt in, or no, I absolutely didn't. That can be really helpful, and you can create rules to filter it out, whatever that's worth. What's your last thought?
Maybe 𝗵𝗵𝗵 is a little too stringent on one side. But I'm hoping that we continue to try to keep things how we're doing it, because I do want to see changes in the way people interact with each other. And I think a lot of it comes down to those one-on-one and those personal relationships and conversations, and understanding actually from the MSP side what they want. And not everyone's going to be the same, and that's fine. Maybe that means in HubSpot, we make more than just do not contact in non-marketing, right? Maybe there's some middle ground in there that they want to see something. Actually, on the Empath, I can give you guys a compliment on this, because I got into y'all's portal recently, and there's so many different like podcasts and stuff that you can, and you're able to turn on and off the notifications. I love that. Like that's putting it back in the MSP's hands and saying, we'll send you content that you want to see. Like, I think that's
We
appreciated.
even give the admins the ability to force those settings for employees.
Oh, that's awesome.
Maybe in this whole concept, maybe you don't really care what your staff's opinion is on being on a list. You want them on it, or you don't want them on it, and you want to override that.
For sure. I think there's important things that people should be seeing, and maybe you have to lock stuff like that down, I guess. But I did see that recently, and I was like, oh, that's really cool. Maybe we should build that into MSP.
I never got any spam from MSP when we were a partner. I'm sure it existed. I just never got it.
No, it didn't, because I was the person that was in charge of those emails, and I didn't have time to send them. But now we do have like a full-blown marketing team that's kind of working on this stuff, and we have a lot of chats internally about it. And, you know, we're still not big on like the drip campaigns and stuff, because we still just want to work with people that want to work with us. But at the same time, now we're getting the requests for, hey, I want to be on your newsletters. I want to be on your community calls. Please email me about this. So we're revamping probably the style that we're going to be going with.
I know some final thoughts. I have a last question just for you.
Oh, okay.
Putting you on the spot.
Okay,
yes.
great for me.
So like we referenced earlier, MSP has a little bit of privilege they've earned. And so if I'm a vendor at a show, in big or small, and I am standing there and I am watching what happens with a vendor like you, where there's no badge scanners out, no lead scanners out. Maybe sometimes you have to run to grab one because a genuine prospect comes up, and people are coming to you. They're wearing your merch. They're advocating for you. They are marching around, bringing other people over. And I go, I want that. I know you can't give a whole strategy in like 2 seconds, but what's a good first step to start down that path?
I think it's 100% being involved in the community as a whole, right? We were involved in the community before we had a SaaS product, and we've been community first, and we've been focused on helping people actually solve problems. And maybe this comes from Brett and Darren, and probably to some of their detriment. We've never been chasing money, but we've been chasing actually helping other people. So we do a lot of things just to I believe in karma, I guess. Like, well,
so
you put good out,
you're not chasing money. I'm not asking you to share any numbers.
Yeah.
But MSP is not now a tiny little, like a $200,000 fever dream.
No.
Like, there's a real business. Not chasing money does not mean not growing quite rapidly and being a large, profitable business.
No, it's
just for our benefit.
We're not chasing money. We're chasing the betterment of the community. And we're believers that if we're doing something good for everybody, that the money will come and people will see what we're trying to do. And it's why we speak at conferences and stuff. We don't talk about ME when we go talk. We talk about running MSPs because we've been where these people are. And a lot of this, you'll see people in our booth. We'll have lead scanners, but it's more about the conversations we're having. I talked about Star Wars with someone like 4 times this week. Like you get those relationships and those champions.
The Enterprise is my favorite Star Wars ship.
Shut up.
When Zelda defeats the Borg.
You're the worst.
Oh
my God, you're going to make me start shaking.
That underground level when
my God,
Zelda jumps in the pipe.
You're the worst.
I don't like that one.
So I think that's it though, is you're building relationships and if you're doing it the correct way and you're integrating with other people and you're doing good things with other people, everyone sees that. And it just gives kind of warm fuzzies. And we've had people like champion MSP who have never used MSP. They just love the team and they've seen us at events and they're like, you guys are so good to people.
Right.
Like,
I don't know anyone over there I like.
I know, right? Yeah. I'm worst.
You and support team.
We're just not great.
Well, we got to wrap up because we are already running late. So thank you so much for joining this recorded episode. We will do more live episodes when we get our act together and coordinate.
We will get our act together at some point.
Until then, keep taking the tea, all of our friends.
And if you want to be a guest, let us know. Love to have other people on it too.
Yeah.
I think it'll be fun. Bye, friends.
Bye, friends.
I'm so awkward on camera still. I will get used to this at some point.